one of the most common things I've been getting recently, people saying they don't really want to do points because they have a family and they book Airbnbs and VRBOs. So they're not really interested in hotels. And I totally get that because that used to be me. And I've come to find out that hotels can be amazing for families too. That being said, there is this opportunity with Wyndham that you can book rental houses by using Capital One points. And we recently had an opportunity to do that we're going to talk about. Now, you do want to look at the value of that, and essentially to break it down, it's to use those points, it's 15,000 points per room per night, but it does get more complicated than that. So if that's something you are interested in, then please DM us and we can go into more of the details. But what we wanted to talk about is kind of the thought process of why you would do that. Because I did it and Karie did it. And I don't know, Karie, you want to talk about first why we did it?
Sure. Well, and actually the background of it is we have a week-long family vacation coming up in Lake Tahoe, one of our favorite locations. Yes. And we're excited that our family is coming in from all over kind of the United States for it. And it's in 2026. So we have an opportunity to stay with all of our family in Lakeland Village in Tahoe. So a lot of you probably know where it is. And we got to plan ahead and look at some of the opportunities there. I also, though, because with points, you're going to have to start getting used to planning ahead. Yes. So I've also planned ahead for our family vacation in Mexico in an all-inclusive. So just a week before, as a globalist, I was able to call Hyatt and book my trip to an all-inclusive in Cancun before I have the points. So that's a little extra perk with globalist. So I know that I have to have a certain amount of points 7 days before I go on our trip in June 2026. So my point game is exclusive to Chase for quite some time. I'm also trying to regather or re-earn my globalist status by then. So my focus is on Chase exclusively. And that is, again, my focus, and Capital One is where you need to be able to do this trip that Kristie did for it. Yeah. So when it came to, am I going to do points or cash for this one? My budget allows for it because my Europe trip that I leave in 9 days has been fully paid for in points. Actually, no, I lie. I have one night in Airbnb that I am splitting with the other couple we're going with. So breaking the bank with about $200 paid for so far for my 2 weeks in Europe. So budget-wise, I'm able to do that because everything else is points right now. So that was where my game was at when I was looking at where my family budget is, points and cash, because that's how I speak now. And in the vacation game is what's my budget at.
But you did use a lot of your Capital One points to fund that trip, fund a recent other international trip. Right? Yep.
I am Capital One points, very weak right now. Yes. The only reason why I'm keeping my Capital One card, to be honest with you, because I love it, it's 2 points for everything you purchase, is every anniversary you get 10,000 Capital One points. So my husband and I both have the card, and we'll use that often for various different things. And that one has also the $300 rate each year.
300 travel credit.
Travel credit. Yeah. So we always use that to book rental cars. Yeah. Because you have to do that through the portal in order to get that. In fact, that is what I just used to book our car in Germany. We're driving from Munich to Amsterdam, and so we actually used that credit for it. So really important card. I love it, but I have 0 points. Really, I'll count the 1,000 points I have in there, pretty much 0. So I had no opportunity to do it anyway for that right now.
Yeah, so, and it is in the points world. I think Capital One points aren't the easiest to get because they are a bank that's a little bit stingy with giving out their cards and stingy with how many cards you can hold. So you just have to be a little bit careful with how you use them. But so we'll talk about sort of my thought process behind me choosing to use my Capital One points. I unfortunately don't have as many opportunities as Karie right now in my life to do international travel. And so I racked up a bunch of Capital One points in the last couple of years. So I have kind of a huge stash, I mean, huge, 500,000 right now. And next summer we have another trip we're going to pay for on cash, which is a Disney cruise, and it's very expensive. So our travel budget is pretty restricted in terms of any more cash vacations. So I was pretty nervous about how I was going to afford this family vacation. So I was excited to know that this was an option for me. And so, you know, we've looked at other times where you can use vacation rentals for other points, and usually it's not a great value for your points. In this case, it is a moderately good value for points. So when I was looking at it, it's about 1.6 cents per point. So when you're looking at cents per point, that runs in the okay to kind of good range. It's usually about what you can get for some standard Hyatt properties. So I kind of had that as my comparison. And I knew that I wasn't gonna have a lot of international trips I was gonna need the Capital One points for. But for season points people, they may balk at my choice because really they save their Capital One points for international flights. They have some really good travel partners and some unique travel partners that other banks don't have. So that is another reason people save their Capital One points. So again, I think this was a good use of my points, but I do think this is a good example of in the points game where you do you know, you do want to get some value for your points, but you also, you know, you might not get to do those big trips that other people get to do because you might, you know, have a job and a family and just life gets in the way. So when you're hearing these people go on these extravagant vacations, you're kind of like, well, that's not me. But that doesn't mean you can't do points because, you know, there are other opportunities out there. But we also wanted to talk about other vacation rental opportunities with points that we haven't totally researched, but so far the research we have done doesn't look great so far. So Karie, do you want to talk about the Hyatt?
Yeah,
rentals?
Hyatt has, and if you just went to like Hyatt.com and search for like you would a hotel, it doesn't pop up. You actually have to like Google Hyatt Hideaways, I think is I usually just Google Hyatt Rentals and it brings you to its own site like Hyatt Hideaways. And you can search like Bear Valley, a lot of places in California, Oregon, you found some. I forgot some of the other locations. I think they're pretty much only in the United States, and you could find some rentals on there, but they're not as cheap as if you were going to go to like VRBO or any of the other locations. Now, I might actually, we were talking about this before you did this, I was like, I might go home and actually see if some of these rentals in Lake Tahoe are there. They're going to be more expensive, but because of my other goals, there might be a threshold of cash I'm willing to pay a little bit extra because it will be a multiplier for me using my Hyatt card. As much as, I think it's like, could be almost sometimes as much as 10 times the amount.
Yeah, if you're booking through Hyatt. And so we should clarify that you're talking about using cash for these rentals. Yeah.
Which you can use points for. I would never probably use points, to be honest. That would probably not be a good use of points.
Yeah.
Unless they had some sort of deal, like a bonus journey, which they do sometimes. But I would actually be, in this case for me, using my Hyatt card, booking through Hyatt in order to get that multiplier effect, get some more qualifying nights because of my future goals within Hyatt, which would be to earn those points for our all-inclusive trip into Cancun the following summer. Because in 2026, by using points for our flight and for our all-inclusive, that is ultimately 100% all expense paid trip for my family of four, because that is food, transportation, everything paid for, and that is like the ultimate of ultimate like free
value for your points.
You know, because everything else, obviously you get there and now you're going to pay for all the things that
Yeah.
your 13-year-old son wants to eat. And so,
Which is why you have globalist.
yes,
Because that way you can get to a Hyatt property and not have to pay at least for breakfast.
yes, all of that kind of stuff. So there are those other things, which I think if you were going to use those, whether you're booking through a portal or anything like that, which I did book through a portal, Capital One portal, actually, when I went to Costa Rica, one of those properties were not a part of a local chain like Marriott or anything like that. I booked through the portal, Capital One, in order to use their travel credit in order to get that. And that was more of like a rental type property within a resort type of thing, because we wanted to have like a more of a home like setting.
Yeah,
so.
I did, because of this whole points thing with Vacasa and Wyndham. I looked at the fees that Vacasa Rentals had, which were pretty similar to VRBO and the other ones. The booking fee and taxes and all that extra stuff was 43% of the total amount that we were paying, which kind of blew my mind because I've never actually done the percentage. And that was crazy. And I basically didn't have to pay any fees with the points that I used. It was sort of, the points covered everything, but it is another sort of point to say that like fees are kind of crazy. And actually started going back to the globalist thing, and this is, being a Hyatt globalist is certainly not a beginner's sport.
Although we made it one.
I know. We could talk to you about that.
Yeah.
It is definitely worth it. But if you think about it, you book Hyatt, you're a globalist, and we can talk about how you get that. You get a free breakfast. You're out and about for whatever you're doing. So no matter what, you're probably eating lunch out. Sometimes the globalists even have like a light dinner thing, right? If there's like a club lounge or something, that really, you're making up a lot of like what you wouldn't have, without a kitchen. But that is a lot of the reason people love globalists and love Hyatt.
Yeah.
But we could talk forever about Hyatt.
Yeah.
So even if you want to do rentals, it's still possible, and we can help you figure it out.